It is the Citizen exclusive, as always, with Mpoki Thompson. Tanzania's role in helping South Africa's majority African government gain power is well documented and appreciated. There are key figures that played a leading role in those efforts. With me today is the first Tanzanian High Commissioner to South Africa, Ambassador Ami Mpungwe. We are marking 30 years of freedom and democracy in South Africa, and today we are going to talk about that journey, that experience, and his leading role in that effort. Ambassador, welcome to the Citizen Exclusive.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be at the Citizen.
Indeed. Right. You are a celebrated figure within the diplomatic community here in Tanzania. You held different roles within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and you're recognized as the first ambassador of Tanzania to South Africa. Now, you entered at a pivotal moment in South Africa's history. Everyone would want to know, first and foremost, how was that experience in 1994 when the majority African government gained power in South Africa and the Tanzanian government appointed you as the first representative of the country to South Africa? Tell us how that moment was, how that experience was.
Quite an exciting moment. It was a culmination of my long involvement with the liberation struggle in Southern Africa in general, but South Africa in particular. And as you know, the only job in my life has been the diplomatic service. And at that time, it was a historical moment in the sense that it was the time that our main focus was support for liberation. And from my early stages of involvement with the Tanzanian diplomacy, South Africa became part of liberation of South Africa became part of my professional life. Way back before I was appointed to go to South Africa. I remember in 1977, I was assigned in New Zealand. Can you imagine? Yeah, partly for training, but also at the time we were mobilizing international support, boycotting, sports boycott between South Africa and New Zealand, rugby, because it was quite a emotive issue to both countries, and we are trying to isolate South Africa. So breaking the sporting ties between New Zealand and South Africa became quite critical. And then we went on arms embargo campaigns and economic sanctions and all these things. And personally, close to 1994, even before that, in 1979, when I was posted to Lusaka during the transition of Zimbabwe's independence, and then later on, I focused more on Southern Africa and South Africa and Namibia. So developed personal relationship with a lot of leadership of ANC. And immediately prior to 1994, prior to that, in 1989, I was assigned as part of Frontline States Transitional Assistance Group for the independence of Namibia. Spent 1 year there. But concurrently, I kept on my contacts and relationship with the ANC and PSC, all liberation movements of South Africa. And in particular, people like President Mbeki, we became quite close colleagues and friends. And after Namibia, I was also able to be deeply involved, even in the initial stages in creating that framework that delivered liberation to South Africa. I remember way back in 1989, yes, That's when we got that framework, 3 phase, of creating atmosphere for free political activity, which included release of Nelson Mandela and other political prisoners, and banning of political parties, return of exiles and refugees. And then we thought if the regime could take those steps, they would have created an atmosphere for free political activity.
Yeah, so I think these were now the initial or the first actions that you did that created now the foundation of the smooth transition.
Yes.
Now, can you tell us the reception from now the South Africans themselves, because now this was a bit of a new space for them, the prospects of gaining freedom, the prospects of gaining democracy, and you as one of the leading actors who are working towards those efforts. Can you tell us the optimism that existed during that period from the South African civilians, but then also the people who are now going to form part of the government? Were these the initial mandates that you were given as High Commissioner? But I know we understand that the efforts have started even before your appointment, your official appointment. Now, I want you to talk a bit about what your first actions were as the ambassador of Tanzania to South Africa.
Yeah, you're right. I think all this, what I've described before, happened when I was director of Africa and Middle East in our foreign service. Yeah. So I was in charge of diplomacy for Africa and Middle East, and that was concurrently when I was also dealing with resolving the Rwandese conflict in the Arusha peace process. So it happened that I was to be picked up to be the first High Commissioner. In fact, just we finished the Rwandese negotiations on the 4th of August 1993, went for holidays September, October. I was picked up to 1993, before 1994, to open a representative office to assist the transition. And precisely because I was quite detailed on the dynamics of the transitional process, it wasn't an accident that I became the victim. Yeah. So I went there in October. So my appointment, and I thought I was naive. I thought look after the transition and then come back and reverted to my position. My bigger position is Director of Africa and Middle East. But President Mwinyi said no. I remember when April came after the transition, after the elections, and so the president felt I should remain there.
Yes, because you already established very close ties and you're part of the transition process.
Although I lost my bigger position as Director of Africa and Middle East, bigger empire, so I was limited to South Africa. It was quite exciting to see the results of my own participation, but certainly the results of Tanzania's participation in the liberation process. Africa and Southern Africa in general, but South Africa in particular.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking about now the efforts that you had put into that entire process. Now, let's look at what were some of the setbacks, what were some of the challenges, because we understand that whenever there is a transition, it's not always smooth. There are definitely going to be some hurdles. Maybe can you highlight to us what those were?
Yeah. The challenges, in fact, is to get all the political formations in sync to create a new South Africa, which was deeply divided, even among the democratic formations. You had Buthelez's Nkanta, going different direction. You had PAC, which at one time thought ANC was moving too early, too fast. That they still mistrusted the apartheid regime. You had ANC, which was quite confident and leading the transitional process. So to have all those forces together, and for me as Tanzania's ambassador, was to understand those dynamics. But more challenging was I understood the ANC very well. I understood the PAC very well. They lived in Tanzania for many years. We interacted in many OAU Liberation Committee meetings, frontline states. That area, I was quite on top of it. But I thought I'd be naive and I'll be unfair to Tanzania if I limit myself to the liberation. Yeah. So actually my biggest challenge was to understand the side that we never had contacts. Yeah, the South African, the white section of South Africa. For me, it would have been comfortable and easy to hang around with friends, ANC and PAC, who used to be together in Lusaka, Dar es Salaam. But I took the tougher option of reaching out to the Afrikaners, to the white Afrikaners, and there was that fear. We never knew each other, but I thought I'll be doing my assignment a huge favor. I mean, Tanzania. But if I get deeper to understand that section that we never had contact, and you can imagine, it was quite a challenge. One of my first contacts and later became friends was General Harden Heiss, who was the head of South African Defense Forces. Can you imagine? This was someone, and then they started welcoming me into the white communities, Afrikaner communities. Went to the farms to get to understand them, and their perceptions about South Africa, about Africa.
Now, as you were trying to engage now with the whites, the Afrikaners, how was the reception now from the Black Africans? Were they in support of your efforts to engage with the other side?
Of course, because those two communities were deeply separated. Always wondering, why are you spending time with these people? And who were perceived to be enemies, and But then there was work to be done. I was representing Tanzania. As ambassador, you have to have first-hand information and details about the country that you are representing, especially the political forces. And I found it very interesting, and I mean, it could have been shocking to me, but they deeply and emotionally considered themselves as Africans. We're not moving away from here. If you thought, and some of them trace back several generations, 3, 4, 5 generations back. Some had traced the more generation back than me, So it was interesting. But of course, much as they consider themselves to be Africans and South Africans, they still felt to be different from their fellow South Africans.
Now, I think you manifested early on your ability to have this foresight of engaging both parties. Let us go back a little bit. Before assuming the role as a representative of Tanzania on a diplomatic level in South Africa, you served as the personal assistant to President Ali Hassan Mwinyi.
Yes.
I want you to tell us that experience that you gained throughout the entire process and how it prepared you for your role now as High Commissioner. Because, as you said, Mwinyi entrusted you with that. Even when you wanted to come back, you're like, no, there's still a lot that needs to be done in South Africa. Tell us a little bit the experience of you as personal assistant to the then president and how that now laid up how to.
No, that gave me a lot of confidence that without that, maybe I would not have had that confidence of engaging the enemy. Yeah, and I understood President Mwinyi was also very reconciliatory in his policies, in his philosophy. So to speak, we did not have a clear policy on how to deal with the immediate post-apartheid relationship. And so in a way, based on my understanding of the thinking and the personality of my president, then I thought I was not flying without a license. I thought that was within the philosophical approach of President Mwinyi, very reconciliatory. And after all, also, in addition to that personal sentiments, it was also the objective of a support for liberation struggle to have these countries liberated and build a closer relationship. And you cannot build closer relationship if you don't understand each other. So for me also, it was part of the process of achieving the ultimate goals of support for liberation.
Yeah. Now, we're talking 30 years later, 1994, 2024. Tanzania and South Africa still maintain close ties.
Yeah.
However, I want you to tell us your personal opinion. Do you think that Tanzania and South Africa today are closer than when we were now establishing these relations? Or what is your opinion on the current status of the Tanzania-South African diplomatic ties, political ties, economic ties, social ties as well?
We have a wonderful relationship, very cordial, very friendly, very sisterly, brotherly. Yeah. What else I wish could even be much deeper than that. Yeah, you know, the groundwork, the foundation for close relations had been laid long time ago. And after all, and as the father of our nation, Mwalimu, had pointed out, many years ago, before even Tanganyika's independence, that African nationalism is meaningless, is dangerous, and anachronistic if it is not Pan-African and is at the same time. So the struggle for nationalist struggles, the liberation struggle within our individual countries were geared to promote not only the relationship between countries, but also to build that Pan-Africanism, build that African unity with a view to uplifting the lives of our people. So, relationship 30 years later, very cordial, very friendly. We can still do much more.
Exactly. So, but then, so it is in your opinion that the relations have lived up to expectations, because now when you were establishing these diplomatic ties, of course, you wanted them to last for generations to come. Have the relations, the ties, lived up to the expectations of you as the founding members of, the liberation, the freedom, democracy of South Africa? And you mentioned the fact that you wish the ties could be deeper. Perhaps can you elaborate in what specific areas?
Yeah. When I was posted there formally now in 1994, it was not just the political relationship or diplomatic relationship. And that was my conversation with my colleagues in Dar es Salaam, that, South Africa was a very developed economy. The agriculture is quite modern. Livestock, animal husbandry, quite modern. The manufacturing, well advanced mining, well advanced tourism. So, of course, there were limitations to the resources for us, but if I had enough resources and staff to cover those different areas, that would also have helped us to widen and deepen our relationship beyond the normal diplomatic and political relationships and all this consular. But, learn, for instance, if I had an attaché for agriculture, or attaché for scientific, because in areas of medical science, industrial, chemical science, and, in areas of even tourism. They're much more advanced. For instance, if I had a staff who's focusing on tourism and how best to learn from how they've developed their tourist assets to make them world class and highly competitive. So I would have been much happier, and I tried to get that, but I also appreciated we had limited resources. So with the few staff that I had, we managed to cover a lot of areas. Maybe later on we'll cover precisely from my deeper understanding of President Mwinyi's policy orientation. That was the time that we initiated. In fact, when I was Director of African Middle East, when I was seeing the end of apartheid, I was one of the initial proponents of economic diplomacy. Yes. That this apartheid, this liberation struggle is coming to an end, which was the main focus of our diplomacy. So we have to start looking into economic issues. Yeah. So that's why I spend a lot of time promoting economic diplomacy in South Africa, mobilizing a lot of investment from South Africa. As part of the process that I've seen, end of liberation should kick in economic diplomacy.
Okay, now of course one would wonder that at a time when South Africa, the majority Africans were under this the depression that they faced from the minority white rule, and Tanzania during that time had already gained freedom, in 1961, and then a couple of years later, more than 30 years later, South Africa now, African government came into power. But the economic disparity, Tanzania and South Africa, was vast. It remains vast today. What do you think? Because you are within the government, you are within, the political, the liberation struggles. What do you think might be the reason for that? That at the time when Tanzania had already gained freedom, South Africa was still under this repressive rule, yet economically these two countries were two worlds apart, even when we were helping South Africans regain or gain their independence.
But the only part of South Africa which was far ahead of Tanzania was the white section. Unfortunately, the black side was not too far from where Tanzania was. Which has been the major challenge in South Africa post-apartheid, to bridge that gap.
Oh, so it still remains quite a contrast.
Quite a contrast, Okay.
Now, during Mwinyi's the time when Tanzania was now still trying to help majority Africans gain rule, we took an economic beating in the sense that we declined economic aid from the British government because they were in support of the white minority rule in South Africa. What made us so resilient that despite our economic hardship that we were facing by that time, we decided to forego this foreign economic aid in support of South Africa because it had catastrophic economic outcomes for Tanzania, for the Tanzanians themselves. So you were part of the government, you were within the corridors of decision making. What made the government then so resilient to the fact that we can forego this economic aid that would help Tanzanians? Let's continue supporting South Africa.
It was not a beating, I think. We can characterize it differently. I would just say it's a price to pay for a principle. And as a result, I think it has helped us to build up our resilience because it was an important price to pay because today we have stronger resilience. If we were still sustaining the fight against apartheid 30 years later, we would still be spending a lot of resources fighting apartheid. But I think we paid that price at the right time. We should even have done it much earlier and release a lot of resources and energy and focus on doing some other positive, non-fighting, non-liberation issues and focus on collaboration and cooperation with South Africa. So it was, it was costly, but it was important price to pay.
Okay. Now, I'm interested to know, was that decision, or were majority of Tanzanians in support of the government, making such huge decisions that would, at the end of the day, trickle down and affect the daily livelihoods of Tanzanians? Was the government being supported by its people?
Actually, the government was quite, under Julius Nyerere, quite effective in mobilizing Tanzanians to support the liberation process. And to understand, it was not it was sacrifice worth making, and it wasn't a problem at all for Tanzania to support liberation. It was, in fact, we saw it as our duty and responsibility, along the dictum that Africa is not free until every one of us is.
Yes, because we were supporting South Africa and also other countries that were still struggling.
And that's why we have all these new structures of cooperation, SADC, and now, I mean, it's only after that, the consequence of that support to have liberation across the entire subcontinent, that we are talking about these economic collaboration issues. Yes. 60 years ago, we wouldn't,
I mean, we even have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area today as a result of these concerted efforts. Now, you as a representative of the Tanzanian government, I want you to share with us candidly, what would you have done differently as High Commissioner, as a representative of Tanzania in South Africa? Were you given that full mandate that, Mpungwe, you're the High Commissioner, you can do as you please, so long as it pushes the efforts for complete liberation, the efforts of connecting the ties of Tanzania and South Africa? What would you have done differently had you been given that mandate?
Nothing, no change. I would,
still do exactly the same.
Exactly,
Okay, but you were the government had trusted you to fully represent Tanzania. So you did that to the best of your ability.
And to the point that I could see some, when I made a decision, crazy decision to retire early, I could see some resistance from my leadership. Which gave me a lot of comfort that I was on the right.
So we'll talk about that a little bit. But before that, President Thabo Mbeki gave you one of the highest awards that are given to foreign dignitaries in South Africa. That is if I am to read, the Order of Good Hope for your efforts, for your role, for your service in South Africa. I want you to tell us what that means to you today, what that meant to you at that time, and what were the other major milestones that you were personally accorded during your service.
It was quite humbling, that as a result of what I thought, I was just performing my duty as a Tanzanian diplomat before the fall of apartheid, and then to be honored to be the first High Commission. It was quite humbling to see that this was my normal call of duty, was highly recognized and appreciated by South Africans. So it was quite humbling and quite heartening.
So I want you to share with us your view on Tanzania's now foreign policy. You've established a long career, long tenure within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You were the Director of Africa and the Middle East. A lot is happening today in Tanzania's foreign policy. We're talking about when it comes to issues related to the diaspora, the special status, and beyond that. What is your general view of today's foreign policy for Tanzania and the critical role that we played in Africa and beyond as one of the founding members of the African nationalism, the Pan-Africanism? Today, 2024, what is your view of Tanzania's foreign policy? Are we headed in the right direction?
I say yes, during our time it was tough. It was, the great part of the continent was still not liberated. We had to go through the liberation wars and all these things. We had those challenges. But the height of Cold War, Major powers pulling each other. But then since then, and towards the end of my career, we also noticed with the fall of Berlin Wall in 1989, which marked the end of Cold War. But now some new developments came in. On the liberation side, we managed to complete the liberation process in Africa, but talking about our foreign service, our foreign policy and our diplomacy, new challenges came in. End of Cold War created new environment, universal values of democracy, of human rights, of rule of law, good governance, and all these things, which required us to open up our politics. And Tanzania in particular, which we were one-party state, we had to open up and start introducing multi-party democracy in Tanzania, focus on human rights, the rule of law, good governance. And then we also noticed the world now, which basically the free market system has been accepted as the best model for managing economies. We see global production, distribution, and exchange processes across the world integrating. Based on economies of scale and scope. We've noticed this period, post-apartheid world, that national boundaries are collapsing and are being transformed into markets. It's no longer, this is Tanzania. How big is your market? It's not how big is your country.
I think so. Today we're living, I think, in a bit of a mix of capitalism and socialism. Because back then Tanzania was a very much socialist country. Even the policies under President, the former president, the late founding father of the nation, Julius Nyerere. But then again, the economy back then was a bit not limited. So as you say that things had changed, the fall of the Cold War, when now the America became the superpower. So the proponents, the only power, the proponents of capitalism, in contrast, us who were embracing socialism. I want to talk about the economic dynamics now.
This is what I'm saying. There was globalization process, the integration of production, distribution, and exchange processes across the world, based on economies of scale, borders being transformed into markets. Then we had also ICT kicking in, information and telecommunication technology, making time, distance, space completely irrelevant in the world of global competition for markets and all these things. We had, for purposes of sustainability, we also noticed the renewed concern and care for environment issues have come in, and now we're also seeing issues of fifth industrial revolution coming in, that with disruptive technologies, opportunities for exponential growth, in tackling poverty level. So I'm mentioning all this to show the dynamics of change in the world, which has made the new world environment characterized by instability, unpredictabilities, discontinuities. So that puts our diplomacy in a much more sophisticated, So you ask me, I think I feel sorry if you thought we had diplomatic challenges during liberation struggle. I think my colleagues who are in diplomacy today are dealing with much more complex situation than what we dealt with.
So after 7 years of you serving as High Commissioner, you decided to call it quits, if I may put it that way. You decided to tender your resignation and focus on the private sector. We've talked about the economic dynamics now that were evolving during that period in time. I want you to share with us what gave you, what made you make that decision? Despite the fact that Tanzania, the government still saw you as an able diplomat, as someone who can still promote Tanzania's interests within South Africa and beyond. But you were like, you know what? My time within the diplomatic community is done. I will focus on something else. What gave you that, what made you make that decision at such a time, at the height of your career, when many people thought that you were perhaps even destined for a bigger role within the government?
3 or 4 reasons. One, I think, I was burnt out. Yeah. There was no juice in my body at all, because burnt out in the sense I was lucky to have been given high responsibilities from a young age. Yeah, at 34, that's when I was appointed personal assistant to President Mwinyi. Yeah, that's basically came end of my youth. Yeah, I lost my youth at that young age. At 34, I was still, still want to go to a disco and all this. But then when you work for the president, this is gone. Yeah, and then second reason, I think, precisely because the bigger part of my career was on the liberation issues. I mean, to see Nelson Mandela out of jail and apartheid being dismantled, eradicated, for me, it was a pinnacle of my career. So, I thought, even if I had remained for the next 50 years in the foreign, I would not achieve that kind of exciting achievement, to see Nelson Mandela out of jail. You may not appreciate it now, but then it meant a lot. You see apartheid being dismantled, eradicated, not dismantled. It was, I thought, you would have sent me to New York, London, Tokyo. It would not have been the same.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And then number 3, number 2 was that, number 3 was, probably you would know, and I had mentioned previously, briefly, when I was in South Africa, I took a very aggressive approach to promoting economic relations, but certainly to promote, as one of the initiators of economic diplomacy, to promote South African investment into Tanzania. Yeah. Most of what you see as South African companies, the big ones, came during my time. And I spent a lot of time mobilizing that investment. In fact, it was my deputy that I said she would be the High Commissioner. I was the door-to-door salesman for Tanzania. So in my engagement and interaction with corporate South Africa, I also came to understand Tanzanian opportunities much better. It's almost ironical that you understand the opportunities in your country from the South African, because when they came here and saw the opportunities, the excitement. So I said, there are a lot of opportunities that Tanzanians can also take advantage of this change, because the country was reforming. President Mkapa at that time was modernizing this economy. From that primitive economy that we had, even to get a crate of beer, you have to print wedding cards. Yeah, you have to queue for bread, and now President Mkapa had taken measures to modernize this economy, establishing the macroeconomic fundamentals, addressing the debt burden that we had at that time, which was unsustainable. We got the HIPIC program. He went into addressing issues of inclusiveness, kurabita, mkukuta, getting everybody, making sure that nobody is left behind. And then we went to micro policies. That's when he started reforming our mining policy, which attracted a lot of investors in the mining sector and transformed our mining industry. The privatized assets started to be turned around. So I saw a lot of opportunity. I said, well, now that I can't achieve anything in the diplomatic front, why don't I Yeah. While I still have some energy.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I took that gamble.
Interesting.
Whether it is paying or not, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you have various investments. You've invested in different sectors, so and you're also chairman of different boards within Tanzanian companies. So I think it did pay off considerably. Now, I'm interested in, I think, the rest of our audience, the readers of The Citizen, and those who follow us on social media pages. Today, as we're talking about the geopolitics, from the East African community, the Southern African Development Community, and the rest, does Tanzania still hold the same weight in terms of its influence in African relations, economically, diplomatically, today as we did back in the years? If not, or if so, can you elaborate on that? And if not, what has changed over the years? Have we taken a back seat, or due to the current circumstances, the situation, the environment is no longer the same? Do we still wield the same influence as we did back in the years?
No, certainly. Of course, different administrations come with different priorities. Certainly, the Julius Nyerere administration was very much focused on Pan-Africanist issues, which was sustained by President Mwinyi. Of course, increasingly, the ones who came after Mwalimu, they also had challenges to address the local economic issues, which, and becoming more focused on national issues. Became inwards. But we still have the important role. We still provide leadership, the historic leadership role to the region, varying from one administration to another. I will be open here. President Mwinyi sustained, President Mkapa sustained, President Kikwete spent a lot of time. President Magufuli, I think his biggest priority was domestic. So, in a sense, we lost a bit our traditional leadership role in the region and on the continent. But now, with President Samia, I think she's reviving that. Yeah, she's also giving a lot of time on international issues, on African issues, partly as part of the continuing with the solidarity issues on the continent, but also to advertise Tanzania as a viable investment destination. So not only within Africa, but with her trips to Europe, she's leaving for South Korea, I think tonight. So. Marketing the country across, which is necessary.
Okay. Well, Ambassador, I think that's the time we have today. Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I've learned a lot about the history of Tanzania from the diplomatic level, but also our input into helping South Africa gain democracy and freedom. Thank you very much.
I think the pleasure is mine. And thank you for welcoming me here to Mwananchi.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. You were with me, Mpungwe Thompson, for the Citizen Exclusive. Until next time, bye-bye.